Hi crew, how are you guys? Type A here. Last video was like me talking about Reactor and not exactly a tutorial, but just like some ensembles that I really like to use. So this video is going to be part 2 of sustractive synthesis for beginners in Renoise. And I was like watching the previous video, the first part, and I've noticed that I barely mentioned like sustractive synthesis, what it is, and like not the most technical explanation, but like just for so you guys have like this basic understanding of what it is. And there's a lot of sustractive synthesizers out there, and they are really simple. Some of them are like hybrid and feature more than one type of synthesis in the machine, but usually you start making your sound with a set of oscillators. You use like single cycle waveforms, and for instance you can start with a sawtooth waveform, which is very rich and complex because it contains a lot of harmonics and it fills up the entire spectrum of sound. And then you can use the tools like we were talking here in Renoise, the modulation system. You can use effects. A lot of them are built in the synthesizer, like filters, any form of wave shaping, distortion, but usually the filters do a lot of the work. And that's basically it for sustractive synthesis. You start with a complex waveform and then you shape it. You can filter the sound but add distortion after, so it's going to bring back a lot of these bring back a lot of these harmonics, but in an artificial way, because the distortion is creating the new harmonics in the sound. And okay, so this is the sound we created in part 1. Which is like this pad synth sound with some moving textures, and we created this sound using the sawtooth waveform that comes with Renoise in the sample library, the cheap sawtooth waveform. And we use 3 of them. We use one in a normal pitch range. We pitch the other like 7 semitones higher and the other an octave higher to create like this chord. So this is something you can try with any synth out there. So it's really like basic technique. Later we created this envelope to control the amplitude, so it goes like, you know, like to give the feeling of the pad sound. And later we add a bunch of effects. And okay, so I was like I'll mention that I'm going to keep on building on top of this to create newer, more complex sound. But you guys may notice that in order to create a much complicated version of this sound, you just need to continue to adding effects and effects and effects until you know you're like satisfied or anything like that. So, but I'm just going to add a simple effect that I didn't mention. I mentioned, but I not implemented in this first instrument, that is going to make like this a lot of impact in the sound. And then I'm going to make a new sound just to show you how you can make other types of sound using the sampler, and but treating it like a sustractive synthesizers. Okay, so right now I'm sending all of these 3 waveforms to the first effects chain. Then I'm like sending the signal of this first chain to the second, and the second to the last one. So some point I'm going to add an EQ, but I'm going to modulate the different bands to create like this vowel-y sound that you can hear in a lot of pad sounds, like really processed type of pad. So I think that at the beginning of the chain it's going to be like interesting. So here let's make this interesting. $12 and $12, and I'm just going to modulate the frequency of these two synthesizers, of these two bands of the IQ. So I'm going to add this into macro 2. So here and here. So the beginning of the chain. And not that far, like in here. And you are $500. $800. But somehow like okay, I know what I'm doing wrong. $800. You can hear the EI sound. That's like because we're like using this like bell type filter type in the EQ. You can see that it's like bellish type of form, and the resonance of the peaks when it goes like sweeping the spectrum, it kind of resonates at particular frequencies. And so this is how people create all those vowel dubstep sounds. Now you can hear what I'm talking about. Let me automate this control. So goes all the way up, so go down and go like so it's really cool and not like a terribly complicated sound, but it's kind of interesting, and I think you can continue to adding effects and give it like your own character to the sound. It's going to be really nice. So let's create another sound to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about when I mean like creating sounds here. So now let's do the opposite. Let's start making a new sound, but using a less rich waveform, like a sine waveform. And we're going to create a bass, reach this up to 24, put it on track 3. Now I'm going to show you other technique you can use, like to continue treating the sampler as a synthesizer, but at the same time add like a more advanced feature, which is like to morph the volume of two individual waveforms to for instance, one waveform is like a sine waveform, which is like quiet and only fundamental tone with no external harmonics or overtones, and then we can add like a triangle waveform, which is more or less like the sine waveform, but with a few extra harmonics. And pitch this to 24 to -6. Now here in the modulation section, enable the macros and add a second modulation set. Map the shape sine waveform to the one and the triangle to the second, and here enable macro 1 parameters and click the first input in the volume, and do the same for the triangle waveform. So when the sine waveform is like at 0, it's going to sound the sine waveform like, and when it's at maximum it's going to stop sound. So we're going to like crossfade the volume, and this is really nice trick to try with different waveforms. Now let's add some distortion to this whole thing. Let's write something here. Speed the tempo. Okay, so I'm going to move this using kind of like a similar way we did last time, not with another file but with a signal follower. So I'm going to name this modulation. I'm going to look for a signal follower, and I'm going to look for Hydra device, and I'm going to put another waveform here. Going to create another set of modulation, and I'm going to call it trigger. So this is going to be like a blocky, like really fast block sound, but it's not going to sound. This is just to trigger the meta device. So mute this and route it to the Hydra device, the signal follower. Hydra input. like this. Oh shit. Good bro. Now it's moving. Now think of the Hydra device as like a container for a lot of macro functionality. Like, do you see that how I like can map like a lot of parameters to just one macro and move them all at once, but I need to control this manually. This is not like I use the signal follower to trigger like this knob, but the Hydra device is just that. It's like this input value scales the minimum and maximum range of all of these individual parameters, and you can group up to 9 of these. So I'm going to put a filter behind the distortion, and I'm going to control the filter. So effects chain 2, analog filter, filter cutoff. You can see how the filter, how it's moving. Let's do the same here. Cut off. And put another distortion effect in the completely on the back. This is the sine waveform, triangle waveform. There's not much different because let me try with another waveform like square waveform. The distortion is creating a lot of harmonics, so you don't hear any difference. This is really an interesting song. So let me show you other sounds I created using this kind of like approach. There's a lot, but let's just analog chords on leads. Let me look this. Okay, this is not exactly chords, no, bass on harmony, complex ambient sounds. Let me check this. Okay, here's another like pad sound that I've created. Try another. I shared this sound in the Renoise like user library. It's really complex sound. And this sound was created using the same like approach to using samples or waveforms to kind of like build something. And really interesting shit. Okay, let me look for another sounds. EDM type bass, a lot of basses and shit. Really cool shit. Okay, so that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. So sustractive synthesis is really like straightforward, there's no much to it. And if you're using like Renoise in the same way that I'm using it, like to approaching the sampler like as a whole, and using the program to kind of like going back and forth to shape your sound, this is going to open a lot of doors for extremely complex and interesting sound design for you guys. I just hope you get like some knowledge out of this video and keep it cool. So leave your comments below. Peace.